All right, there's those folks. Let's get the Facebook group going in here. And yeah, we got it going here. 1 and 2. All right, welcome in, welcome in. It is 6:45 a.m. where I'm at, probably 7:45 where most of you are at. And it's a morning show, so we're everywhere. Whatever time zone you're in, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is time for Broncos for breakfast. Scott, I mean, I don't know about you. I'm a breakfast person, Broncos person any time of the day, but breakfast as well. I mean, eggs. I'll have the bacon and sausage, but breakfast any time of the day is good for me.
Yeah, I'm always been a big breakfast guy anyway. They said it's the most important meal of the day. I've just taken it to heart.
Yeah. Since I've been very focused on getting in mountaineering shape since the end of May. A lot of eggs. God, so many eggs consumed. Not enough protein in eggs, surprisingly. I wish there was a little bit more, but we're getting it done. We're doing
Well,
well.
cholesterol though, so that's good.
Yeah. I have a lot of egg whites also, so that's a little more expensive. But yeah, we're doing it. We're working out. We're getting steps in, and we're hanging out.
I did 25 miles yesterday on my bicycle, so that was a day. I'm having
You
trouble
need to
sitting
come out.
down now, but
You ever heard of bike packing? So I have buddies
can
out who are
probably
way
figure it
in.
out though. I mean, it's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
self-explanatory. Oh
They
yeah,
have
it's
like
where you go
pedal.
underwater scuba diving. No, what?
A lot of people out here are way into the bike packing. I have some buddies who are way into it, and they'll go take the ferries. They'll ride on for free and take the ferries with their bikes and go do 4 or 5 days on the islands, biking on the islands and sleeping on one of the coast there and watching like orcas swim and watch the seals. I mean, it's pretty incredible to be able to do that stuff. Yeah, Pacific
Who
Northwest in the
needs
summer.
stuff when you can do things like that? That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, it's an elite summer place for sure. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Broncos, Victory Monday, undefeated in preseason. Does that mean anything? Probably not, but sure as heck, Scott made the games much more entertaining to watch. And my takeaway is that this team, from 1 to 90, competitive, feisty, energetic, passionate, well coached. I don't know how much, I'll never forget the Lions went undefeated in preseason. This is the year that they went 0-16. So do the results actually matter? No. But it does look like a team that is playing the right kind of football to translate to the regular season. So I'm optimistic.
Well, and the execution looks good.
Yeah.
It's they get in the red zone, and you're like, okay, how are they going to score? I know you gave Sean Payton his flowers a lot last year, talking about drawing up wide open red zone stuff. He's good at it. And the quarterbacks there are executing, and Russell Wilson got a lot of his touchdowns last year in the red zone. And no matter who it was at quarterback, they were getting into the end zone.
Yeah, they stunk in the run game in the red zone last year. So hopefully, quarterback run design stuff can unleash that a little bit. But a lot of the passing touchdowns just felt really coordinated in the end. So again, how much do the preseason results actually matter? I mean, Scott, I'm a little bummed that you didn't tell me not to watch that Falcons game because I watched
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't watch it down of it. If they don't care, why should I? It's kind of how I've always thought about it. I remember when I moved to California, Stanford and Cal had a season. Yeah, there was one when they were both really good. So I'm like, okay, I'll check this out. I'm going to watch this. Pac-12 showdown. I tune it in, and I think it's at Cal. Doesn't matter where it was. There's like 18,000 people in the stands. They're empty. It's like a top 10 matchup. I'm like, click. I'm like, if y'all don't give a damn, why should I? So that's kind of how I felt about the Falcons preseason. Broncos, watched every minute of Broncos games.
Yeah. I mean, the band is on the field, Scott, right? That was Cal Stanford. That's before me. But who can forget that one? Man, hilarious. Not hilarious coming in with the support. Always appreciate the support coming in here, keeping the lights on with the season underway. Any contribution, support that we can get from you guys helps, the boss man keep the lights on for us and keeps these morning shows going. As much as Scott and I, it is a passion for us watching these football games. I don't know if we would be doing it if there wasn't some support from you guys like this. So shout out to Rob. Thank you so much. Says, good morning, Nick and Scott, the best MHH team with a season starting soon. Are you going back to Thursday or Friday shows 3 times a week? We haven't talked about that as much. I'm going to be honest, Scott. I don't know if I have the the runway at home with all the baby stuff, especially because we are feeding him solids in the morning now as well, and I have to do the daycare drop off. So my window of flexibility in the morning is much more limited. But we'll see.
Nick, my day-to-day has gotten 10 times busier than it has been the past few years, which has been good for me. And I've enjoyed being done on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So I enjoy having Thursday and Friday off. Not that I don't enjoy potting, but I have other responsibilities too. And it lets me catch up on some stuff that I'm not able to do right now. I'm hanging out, goofing off with y'all.
Yeah. So obviously, if anything big happens, we might switch things up a little bit. But I think for now, the plan, we haven't even talked about it. This is live happening now, but probably keeping it Monday and Wednesday. Maybe there'll be an emergency pod here and there. But like we're doing allergens right now, Scott, and we're going to have them eggs for a third day in a row this morning. So making sure nothing happens. I really recommend doing it in the morning because you don't want to be feeding them late. And then all of a sudden it's an allergic reaction at 9 p.m. And it's dark. You can't really see what's going on. So that's only doing 2 shows, but I'm here Tuesday nights as well, right? I mean, with Carl, so hanging out, and every once in a while we jump in with other things as well. But on that note, if we are the best MHH team, make sure you guys are heading out to Denver week 2 this year. I know tickets are expensive, but Scott and I are going to be there tailgating pregame and hanging out in Denver for that Broncos Steelers game. So that's coming up in 3 weeks now. So that'll be a lot of fun. Time flies. I'll be out there Saturday afternoon through Tuesday, so I'll be around. Michael coming in says good morning.
I come out Saturday afternoon and I leave Monday afternoon.
Yeah, so it'll be hoping for good weather. I'm a little bummed. Just because daycare is so freaking expensive, and we don't have more Rob Bucksbaums helping with the support. We decided not to make the expenditure to go spend time in Rocky Mountain National Park, which breaks my heart. I mean, my son's literally named after the founder of Rocky Mountain National Park out there, and Estes Park as well. And I really want to climb Long's Peak out there. I think I'm in physical shape to go make that run, but not this year, maybe next year. Michael comes in, talk about the support, says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Broncos. Go, Michael. Always appreciate you coming in. And we got Troy also, some big hitters coming in, the people who really do support the show. You all do, but really do shout out Michael and Troy. Pardon me. He says, hey, guys, preseason is a tough predictor, but there does seem to be a huge difference in effort and tough plays so far this year. It just seems cohesive. They're playing fast. They're playing physical. It seems like the Sean Payton and the vision of the team top to bottom has them really rolling. Now, as you said, preseason is not really a good predictor. Forget the tough predictor. It's not always the best. Success in preseason is not indicative of success in the regular season. But this Denver team does seem to be playing football the right way if we're going to try to draw any takeaways from preseason.
Yeah, and one of the takeaways I might have is, golly, I'm trying to use our lads, and I'm getting a Xfinity pop over that's just ruining it. I'm trying to keep an eye on as we start talking about 53s and stuff, just as a reference, and can't use it right now. One of my takeaways is there doesn't seem to be anybody out there that just flat out doesn't belong. You know, there were times in previous seasons where just like, oh no,
yeah,
you know, we can't be doing this. This doesn't need to be out. And unfortunately, a couple of those guys ended up being starters the next year. You know, so there's depth, which matters. I mean, obviously in the NFL, especially on defense, where there's much heavier rotations. On offense, it's like just don't get injured, but you need depth on defense. You need 18 to 20 guys that are playing on defense. And while there's not, other than Pat Surtain and maybe Zach Allen, there's not 5 or 6 real difference makers out there. There's quality football players, and you go too deep now in most of the positions. Which is, again, it's an improvement. Now, let's throw a third of your available salary cap out the window, knowing we get that back next year, and you're building. The arrow's definitely headed in the right direction, Nick.
Yeah, it feels like for the first time in a long time, there is a plan and tangible direction with this Broncos team and as an organization. Now, I think it's very much premature to be planning this team's for sure making the playoffs or contending with the likes of the Ravens and Chiefs and just the top, the cream of the crop in the AFC. Now, that doesn't mean you can't beat them any week, but over the massive sample size of a variety of opponents, that's not an expectation. That's realistic. Granted, it's a young team. We'll see how it goes 1 week at a time. Not to be cliche, but you start stringing wins together. Why not, right? But it's a team that's definitely heading in a positive direction and should have Broncos country energized. This isn't the year where it's make or break, but it's a building year. If let's say 2 or 3 years from now, Denver's a Super Bowl favorite, we're going to look back on the 2024 season as like where it turned around, where the first stepping stone was for this team's direction. So I'm excited to be covering this team. It doesn't feel like last year, Scott, it felt a little bit. I mean, I'm always excited to cover the Broncos. It's a blessing to be here and to talk football with you every day, or the days that we do. But it felt capped with Russell Wilson. You were on the train and you could see the brick wall coming. It's like there's no way we're going to miss this brick wall. We're going to ram into this full speed. Now it seems like who knows around the corner. There's possibility we're heading in the right direction. So super excited for that.
Well, and it started off poorly.
Yeah.
The expectations were probably a little higher beginning last year, and then it started off poorly. I mean, you can go back. The most down I've ever felt about this team was following the Jets game. I can't find want to see just how the season started.
They lost to the Raiders. They lost to the Commanders.
Yeah, I mean, It started 1-5.
Yep.
So
game.
You didn't. The idea of things are, you didn't really start off on a high and see a wall coming. It started off really bad and then got better. But again, you could see that you were warned everybody from the beginning. This is kind of a mirage, y'all. With the turnovers aren't sustainable, and you're winning these games because of turnovers. But I was ready to burn the whole thing down. It was week 5 when you lost to the Raiders. All right, the Commanders. What is it with the Commanders and the teams we follow, Nick? Miami Dolphins. I mean, that might have been the low point for some people. For me, I was ready to burn everything down after that Jets game, and then all of a sudden it turns around. You play hard against the Chiefs. You're like, all right, I saw some fight there. This team has not given up. That's what's important. And then a comeback win against the Packers, and then you go in and you beat the Chiefs and go on that run. I mean, beating the Chiefs and then at Buffalo on a nationally televised game back to back, you're like, you got something here. Now we're filling in some pieces parts, so to speak. Coach Chris filling us in. He says, good morning. The next 48 hours is going to be crazy. I know it's preseason, but overall the team looks more competent and energetic than last year. Anyone who you feel will be cut, that could be a shocker. Love you guys. Love you too, brother. Appreciate the support.
As far as cuts, I don't think it'll happen, but I think you have some depth on the defensive line. Maybe you go younger and you move on from DJ Jones. That's one that could happen. I feel like he's just been I don't think he's lived up to the contract last season, and he's somebody you could save a little money on. But granted, you do create a hole there doing that, and the defensive line is definitely the strength of the defense. So maybe you don't do that. As far as the other spots there, I mean, Mathis was somebody who was kind of on the bubble to a certain extent, but now that he had the injury, carted off MRI today, sounds like he's going to be. The early tests are positive, but we don't know how long he'll be out. Other than that, some surprising ones. I mean, maybe one of these wide receivers that stands out. You just use a fourth on Troy Franklin. Maybe he's a shocking release kind of guy. Samaje Perine could be a shocking one. He spent a fifth on Estime, who looked much better in the Cardinals. He looked kind of like the guy that I hoped he would be versus the Cardinals.
He had nifty feet. Like, he's not going to be a jump cut type of guy, but what I saw was he could move enough to get a guy off balance and he can then break a tackle. Yep. If you're taking NFL guys head on in the front seven, you're not getting anywhere.
No.
But if I can feint just enough, shift just enough that they're coming from my side, and then I can break the tackle. I saw that out of him this week. I'm like, he's got his feet are nifty. They're not. He's never going to be a scat back.
No.
But he was doing enough to get guys off balance to then break tackles.
Yep. And one more, I guess I don't know if you'd call it surprising or not, but I know everybody's a July superstar in Lucas Kroll. He didn't really endear himself so much to me, Scott, in preseason action. I think Nate Atkins is a more valuable, versatile piece than Lucas Kroll, who I would rather keep on the roster at this point. But
you'd keep 3 because Atkins would get some fullback time though. You'd keep 3. Who am I missing?
Troutman and Dulcich.
Okay, Troutman is who you're penciling in then for sure.
Yeah, I'd keep Troutman, Dulcich, and Atkins over Kroll based on what I saw in preseason, because Atkins is a much more versatile piece, more special teams value.
All the talk of Kroll was in walkthroughs.
I know.
It was like OTA's glorified walkthroughs, which was like, guys, come on now.
Yeah. I know how you felt about that, Scott.
It's bad enough to get gassed up about preseason, but to do it during OTAs when they're in shorts and T-shirts.
Yeah.
Come on.
I know. And people are looking for something to be excited about, but now you got the rookie quarterback, so hopefully that changes the perspective a little bit. I did want to circle back real quick. We're all positive vibes this morning for the most part, but the low point for me, Scott, was Christmas 2 years ago when Baker Mayfield went like 30 for 30 against Denver for like 10,000 yards.
And
the Rams, and you had Dalton Reisner fighting Brett Rippon on the sideline.
I call that the Christmas Day massacre.
Yeah, and Patrick Starfish clowning Russell Wilson when he did a pick six. That felt dystopian to me. That was an out of body experience. That was definitely the low point for me. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, there's been a few. But Nathaniel Hackett coming back into Denver and winning with Zach Wilson to me was
rough.
That was burn it all. Just burn it all down.
Yeah. Yep. Not burn it all.
Anybody that you've got money in a contract that you have any flexibility, get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
All of them. Now, who's still here? Sutton and Bowles. DJ's still here because we went through a whole list of guys that it's like trade deadline, get rid of all of them.
Yeah.
And Sutton and Bowles are still there.
Yep. Sutton and Bowles still here. A lot of guys still
Simmons,
here. And
Judy.
Gone.
Who else was in that list?
Simmons gone.
Randy Gregory. I think he may have already been gone. He got cut again. I think he's probably out of football now. He'll probably retire. He'll probably
Buccaneer stuff. He didn't report to the Bucks.
Yeah, I think he's done with football.
Weird. Hope he's okay. I know he's had stuff off the field, but Perry West, great show. Looking forward to the season. Go Broncos. Thank you so much, Perry. You are I don't recognize the name Perry West at the top of my head here. No profile.
Perry's been around a bunch, at least through the evening shows too. So appreciate you hanging out with us this morning, Perry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Perry. We appreciate you coming in. And some more people coming in. We got Jeremy Sean. Sean confirmed they are keeping all 3 quarterbacks. That to me tells Jarrett Stidham's a backup at least to start the season. I think they're keeping all 3 quarterbacks. I mean, Sean said so as much, unless somebody comes offering a trade offer for one of these backup quarterbacks. There are teams out there, Scott, that have real serious questions at the backup quarterback spot and teams with aspirations this season. So I know that there's been a little bit of conversation in Broncos country about the value of that 3rd quarterback. But again, this is a team. I don't think this is a Super Bowl or bust season, and quarterbacks have value, even backup quarterbacks, considering, I mean, look what the market did this year for the backup quarterback. So I'm on team keep 3 as well, unless somebody's offering you're getting a surplus value in return. Like, what do you trade for Zach Wilson? A 7th? Something.
It was a pick swap.
Pick swap?
Yep.
Let's say you get a 5th back for him now because of what he showed. He had some Sean Payton tutelage. Probably not going to happen. I'm just talking hypotheticals here. But then you're talking about, that's finding value in the cracks there. Is it going to make a big difference long term? Maybe not. But you're still increasing value, buying a stock, selling a stock when it's higher. So that's something to consider if they don't keep all 3. But right now, I think they're going to keep all 3. They won't find
you make enough microtransactions, you're rich, right?
What is the thing? You trade a paperclip all the way up to a house eventually. That's the story on social media. Maybe eventually it turns into a first-round pick. You
can't go broke making a profit. But no, I've always thought, just based on the talking up of all the quarterbacks, and I know I warn y'all, watch what they do, not what they say. Well, what they do has kind of been similar also in this, and that's giving everybody plenty of opportunities and the investment that's been made in time and effort, and not just the investment financially in Jarrett Stidham and the effort it took to go get him when you already had a starter was significant. And the time in order to, Sean Payton said, we've been working on this trade for a month, and the investment of time into Zach Wilson, I don't think you're just going to pull the plug on that. So it's always said to me that you're going to keep 3. I think 3 as well.
Yep. Unless they can find a trade partner. Who knows? Zach Powers, morning. Great to see you. Kenneth is in the house. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone had a great weekend. Pretty good. Nicholas comes in here, says, I think Stidham needs to be traded or released. I'm honestly surprised how much vitriol there is for Jarrett Stidham. I mean, I'll play the clips here. I have them up about Jarrett Stidham's comments. I'm with Jeremy, though. I think it's a non-story. He's disappointed. This was probably Jarrett Stidham's best and maybe only chance to ever win a starting spot in the NFL because he's a veteran journeyman and it was a team that didn't have a sure thing at quarterback. And obviously with the way Sean Payton's talked about Stidham, he liked him. But Stidham lost it. Sun's probably setting on that quality starter option that could have happened. I'm doing air quotes for those listening after the fact for Stidham, but now he's probably more of that, backup, maybe spot starter type in his career. It's probably what he always was anyway. But I just see somebody who fought hard, and ended up losing, and he's disappointed that it happened. But I don't think it's negative. I think it's just being truthful. But all the other stuff around Jarrett Stidham has been positive. I think he speaks well. I think he's definitely bought in on the team. So I found it really weird how much negativity there is from Broncos country for Stidham. He already lost to our guy, right? Bo Nix. So let's, not get so upset and pin it on him. It kind of feels a little Teddy Bridgewater-esque where he's the enemy in the way of progress for the savior, Drew Lock. He's backup. It's non-story. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, and he's not making a ton of money. It's not like his contract is holding you back in some way, like you would find with Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Jarrett Stidham being on the roster is not hurting the team.
No.
So what's the problem?
Yep. And by all indications too, Scott, I know that Zach Wilson, we'll get into Jarrett Stidham's comments here and the game itself and just backup quarterback spot. But as you mentioned, watch what I do, not what I say. Jarrett Stidham was pretty much given consistently either first team or second team reps when it was a backup quarterback stuff in training camp. All reports are it went to Stidham or Nix, and after Nix was announced or getting more opportunity, the second, third game, it was Stidham. It was never really Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham in those situations. And then in the third preseason game, you have Jarrett Stidham out there. He one drive, touchdown, off the field. Okay, Zach, it's your turn out there. That to me says Stidham is the backup quarterback, and he's probably going to be safe. And that the backup quarterback spot here for me, Broncos country, makes me think that there's two different directions here for the backup. If it's Bo Nix starting, let's say Bo Nix gets hurt or knock on wood. We obviously don't want that to happen. But if the season's going well, Bo Nix is going to miss a little bit of time. You go with Jarrett Stidham, caretaker of the offense, 2 to 4 games, hopefully keep the wheels on the bus. And when Bo Nix comes back, hopefully you're still in contention. If Nix gets hurt and you're 1-7, there's no point in playing Jarrett Stidham. Let's see what we have in the young guy at that point. I think that's the pathway for Zach Wilson, because then you might get lightning in a bottle. You never know on that front. But I think if in reality, Stidham's the backup, going to be the backup, as long as the wheels are on the bus, and of course Nix is healthy.
Which by the time you'd be 1-7, it'd be too late to trade Zach Wilson, and he'd be a free agent at the end of the year.
You're going to probably get a comp pick though, given what quarterbacks
There's
get
no
paid.
way they sit out long. They sit out free agency enough, especially with all the money they have next year to get a comp pick back. No way.
I don't know, because
I do.
quarterbacks
No
get
way.
paid. Yeah. Okay.
How much money do they have next year?
Less than you'd think. Still.
But how much have they spent in the last 2 years to cancel out comp picks when they got more than that and they got more holes to fill?
Yeah.
Sean Payton isn't going to sit out free agency in order to get a comp pick back. There's no way.
I don't think you have to sit out free agency still, because again, the way the quarterback stuff sets up, it's crazy what a different bracket it is earnings wise. Jarrett Stidham's contract would have gotten you a 5th this year, and we're talking about him like he's nothing, right? Quarterbacks get paid crazy money on the open market, but we'll see. You're definitely right. It's probably less likely than likely, but I wouldn't rule it out completely.
Brandon Jones would have canceled out Zach Wilson.
I don't know exactly how it works, because I think Wilson, if he has, again, talking a good season, maybe has a chance.
They've got too much money next year to play the comp pick game.
Probably. Although, yeah, probably. We got Roy coming in, says, good morning for the second time. Lots to talk about. Some ridiculous thing regarding Stidham. Yeah, I think he's a fine, competent backup. Is it something where maybe you can approach him and give him more guaranteed money this season for a slightly lower cap hit and save 1.5 million or something, maybe. But I don't think he's detrimental to the team by any point. And it's kind of the thing of this perceived upside, right, Scott? Like Zach Wilson. I mean, you see the arm talent flashes. He had some, I don't know how much you watched this last game, but he had some freaking flashes. I mean, he's got the strongest arm on the team.
Of course. I mean, the guy went number 2 overall in the NFL because he's toolsy. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Just some of the ones, like, oh my God.
He's the best athlete. You know, we've talked about Bo Nix being able to run. I think Zach's probably a little faster, but it's close. It's in the neighborhood. But he can run. He can throw. He can run and throw.
Yep.
Can he play quarterback? To this point of his career, no.
Yeah.
And I know this is the NFL, so it's going to get there's a ton of exposure anyway. And I know being in contention for the starting quarterback, but there's so much talk around Jarrett Stidham. Who is Jarrett Stidham? Jarrett Stidham is entering his 6th year in the league with 4 career starts with 3 teams. In the grand scheme of things, Jarrett Stidham is a nobody. He's an NFL journeyman nobody. Yet he gets, we're getting the Q rating here and the exposure, like we're talking about somebody. Jarrett Stidham has 4 starts in 5 years on 3 teams. Well, someone else. It's not like he's been sitting behind. We're not talking about Jordan Love here, who's been sitting behind an NFL guy we know what we got. A Hall of Fame guy. We know what we got. We're gonna keep him in the oven until he's ready, until he's done. He's been moved. He's been, and the Broncos had Stidham and decided they needed to spend a number 1 pick on a quarterback. We know what Stidham is. He's a journeyman backup. That's what he is.
Yep. Great. And there is still some value.
Sure. I'd love that job.
Yeah. That's the whole point of Blue Mountain State, right? One of the main storylines, if you ever watch that. But Jermaine coming in, I feel as a team, we have more swagger and more belief. The future looks bright. I absolutely agree with that. We got Mark coming in, says, thanks for getting me through the offseason. Thank you guys for getting us through the offseason and hanging out with us. Monica in here, your thoughts on Wilson's performance. I think we saw the good and the bad from Wilson. It's still watching him, Scott. You see some of those throws, the pocket manipulation, elusiveness, and that third or that 20-yard scamper that he had was awesome. Lowered the shoulder as well. Some of the throws, some heat. Vapor trails on those. When he hits that back foot and releases it, it's pretty. But also holding on the ball too long, taking time to get through reads. Just watching, some of the sacks were definitely on him. I think the third-string offensive line, granted, which team's third-string offensive line is good in the NFL, but they were really, really rough in this game. I was not a fan of a lot of what I saw there, but Wilson still kind of struggling to protect himself, know when a play is dead, get through his reads, just holding on to the ball too long. You got to click, tick, tick, buddy. You got to get rid of it. So good and bad there. More good than bad in this game, but that's Wilson still kind of has that issue.
And for me, it's I've got a guy draping on me. I'm going to throw the ball to the flats in the sideline and the guy in coverage. You cannot make that throw. You got lucky. That's a pick six waiting to happen, and that's how he spent most of his career so far.
Yeah.
When we talk about floor versus ceiling, that's the floor, and it's in the basement. He's got the throws that'll make the jaw-dropping throws, without a doubt, but he'll also have the mind-boggling throws like, what are you doing? You cannot do that. And those what are you doing throws, somehow Josh Allen can make them. His oh my God moments are well outweigh those. But it's Josh Allen makes those throws. Mm-hmm. Like, again, you're draped over. There's a guy draped over you, and I'm going to throw off my back foot to a guy in the flats that's covered. No, man. And that was one of his first throws. He bounced back from that. But those are the things that scare you to death about Zach Wilson.
Yep.
And real quick, Nick, and then I'll turn it over. And that's some of that you see with the guys that have unbelievable arms.
Yeah.
You saw Broncos country, you know it. You saw it with Elway. They overtrust their arms. They try and make throws that they can't. Brett Favre did it did it forever. I just mentioned Josh Allen. Josh Allen still does it. Those guys that have those superhuman tools don't always know their limitations. And Zach Wilson is very toolsy.
Yep, the arm talent's true. The other one, again, it's just the pocket stuff, knowing when to get to the ball. There's one where he leaked left, and he's keeping his eyes downfield, and a lucky to hold on to the football. A guy comes up behind him and I think knocks it loose for a second and Wilson gets it back. But it's just stuff like that. It's like protecting the football, knowing when to get through it, executing the offense, avoiding the negative plays. I mean, for Sean Payton talking so much about avoiding the negatives and sacks, I didn't see that as much with Stidham as we did Wilson. You much more high variance. I think they're going to keep all three. As Jeremy said again, Sean basically confirmed it, unless there's a trade out there. And there's value. I think you're still hoarding value there, Scott. So we'll see what happens there with the position. Not a bad spot. I mean, as Sean Payton mentioned in his interview with Kay Adams, I believe it was Kay Adams, he said to Zach Wilson, I'm here to make you millions, whether with us or with somebody else down the line. So we'll see. Good to see you, Monica. Adam Sears in the house. Great to see you as well. We got... of course, yeah, Jay Roper said Cecil promoted Kroll. I mean, I don't know. It's the offseason, so things kind of happen. You never know. Pearl Heater's in the house. Good to see you. Pearl, Leroy, good morning. Zach Wilson earned quarterback too, despite playing with street offensive linemen. Imagine if they were starters. I mean, he's going against the backups, third, fourth string, fifth string guys as well. Everything that the Broncos have done up to this point with opportunities would suggest that Stidham is second in the pecking order, with Wilson doing enough to be keeping a spot and being intriguing, depending on which way the season goes. I'm happy for Wilson, but I just think that what I've heard and what I've seen would be Stidham being the quarterback too.
Going back to the question, we'll roll that back into, this point. How is Sean Payton going to make Zach Wilson millions?
I mean, honestly, he showed enough in preseason, and you can use the year of like, oh, been with Sean Payton. Look how much he's learned now that maybe he gets an opportunity after this year. Or, Stidham's free agent at the end of the year. Maybe he's making millions in Denver as the backup 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, sign him a new contract. But it's like, what have you done and what are you going to do to this point that is going to completely change the fact that I was able to get you for a 7th, 6th round pick swap, that you were tossed out? Because in theory, I mean, we spent an awful lot of time talking about Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson. We're hoping we don't see either one of them until next training camp, and they're both out of contract. We may never see that. You're hoping you never see either one of them throw a pass again.
Yep, maybe a kneel down here or there.
But you know what I mean. It's it's like he's out of contract. What's you didn't play him with the ones. You didn't showcase him really, except for the second half of a preseason game, the final preseason game where people are focusing on their own rosters. So it's like, how are you going to make him millions? Yeah. You specifically with your development, how are you, Sean Payton, going to make Zach Wilson millions? Because you're not going to play him.
Yeah, ideally not. I mean, but we saw it last year, Scott. I think we had the most quarterbacks take snaps in NFL history last season. So, I mean, injuries are happening. It's a longer season now. They're protecting these guys, but they still get dinged up. So we'll see. Knock on wood. Again, we don't want that to happen, but it's the NFL, man. Things happen. Mark Schrader, good morning, Nick and Scott. Good to see you. And on that note, let's hear what these quarterbacks had to say. Oops, it's starting to play already. Let's pull this one up. I'm pulling it up from Broncos for 6. He had both videos here over on Twitter. Nice compiled easily, so we'll go with that. And here is Jarrett Stidham. Oh, I didn't pull it up yet. There we go.
I know I'm a starting quarterback. Obviously, I was very disappointed. I know I'm a starting quarterback in this league. I have zero doubts about that. And, it just didn't shake out my way. But I know what kind of player I am, kind of person I am. And like I said earlier, I'll be ready to go if I need to be. And, like I said, I have no doubts that I'm a starting caliber quarterback in this league.
See, to me, Scott, that's a no-nothing comments. I don't view it as being negative. He's just disappointed that he didn't get it. I feel like I'd be the same way. If we ever see Jarrett Stidham again, I'm sure it's going to be somebody will ask him a question like, are you disappointed if you lost? I don't know what the lead-up question was. Yeah, he's disappointed. Of course. This was his chance, like we talked about. But what about now as the backup? Well, I'm going to do everything to prepare to be ready and be a good part of this room. I mean, all the other people probably haven't listened to much Jarrett Stidham interviews beforehand, but they've all been pretty positive about the team atmosphere and working with Payton and everything. So I don't view this as much of a story. I think people are making too much of it.
Well, and it's taken out of context, because the other part of this is that was the final question. Yeah. So he had already gone through paragraphs. I'm looking at the quotes right now, and paragraphs of however long that was, probably 8 to 10 minutes of this is what I'm going to do to help the team, and this is how I can help Bo get ready, et cetera, that taken out of context, I'm very disappointed. Well, and part of it is, well, man, I just said earlier, I'd love your job. I'd love to take your job.
Yeah.
But he should be. I don't want guys that'll be, every coach will tell you, Sean Payton, what do you think about Jarrett Stidham's comments? I'll go ahead and tell you. I don't want guys that are happy being backups. That's what they all say. So, yeah, I want him to be disappointed. I want him to think he's a starting quarterback in that league, even if he's not.
Yeah. And based on all comments and opportunities coming in, it was a heavily favored to Bo Nix, as it should have been after the investment they did and where he's at as a player and his amount of snaps and everything. But it was a Jarrett Stidham versus Bo Nix chance. Zach Wilson was getting the third team reps. He was always kind of a reclamation project. He was never really in line to be the starter. So when you ask Jarrett Stidham about earning the backup spot versus Zach Wilson, Wilson knew that he was not going to be starting here this year. There was a chance for Stidham. So let's hear what Wilson had to say here as I pull that up as well before we hit play. There we go.
Yeah, I was excited for him. I mean, I don't think it was a surprise too much, obviously, right? I think he's had a great camp. I told him I'm excited for him.
Hopefully you can hear it.
I really
can't hear it, but it's got
okay.
Basically, I'm excited for something. It wasn't too much of a surprise, right?
Yeah. Yeah, not a surprise that Bo Nix won it, and he's happy for him and happy to be in Broncos country and blah, 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 blah. No surprise there. That one was much quieter than the Jarrett Stidham one. I don't know what happened there.
No, but when you draft a guy number 12 overall and you've got Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson as your competition, it'd be a surprise if he wasn't your starter.
Yeah. So again, not super duper surprising there from Zach Wilson by any means. We have the comments here also from Mike Kliss says, I was excited for him. I don't think it was a surprise too much, right? I think he's had a great camp. I told him I'm excited for him with this opportunity. I really believe they're putting him in a good situation. I think Sean has done a phenomenal job. And the coaches we hang out with.
Nick, all of these quotes are in your mailbox too.
Yes, I know.
So you don't have to keep quoting other people as the source.
Yeah, true. That's I always like to give a shout out to Mike Kliss, though. He does a good job. I'm excited to see what he can do, and I think he's ready for it. So talking Zach Wilson on Bo Nix. I'm going to keep all three unless the trade happens, and I think all three showed enough. I think Jarrett Stidham's opportunities were probably the least of the three quarterbacks here, and things outside of his control happened that made the offense not as functional. But in the end, Bo Nix earned it, as he should have, and as was best case for the Broncos. And excited to see what he can do this year as a starter, and happy to keep Jarrett Stidham as the backup and Zach Wilson number 2. I don't think the $5 million saved really makes much of a difference for the Broncos. That's, couch cushion money compared to what you can do salary cap wise, in my opinion, especially for a backup quarterback and the stability and steadiness that I believe Stidham has compared to Wilson.
As I've said before, there are 11 guys on this team that have a $5 million or better cap hit. 11.
You can make $5 million out of that, though. Still, if you wanted to.
But it's not like you're like, oh, that's chump change. That's $5,100,000 would put you in the top half of paid starters.
Yeah,
on the Denver Broncos. I mean, it matters.
The number one dead cap hit, plays into that as well. This is a weird outlier season, so there'll be years that are different than now. Because what are they at? 60 million.
Typically, that $5 million would probably go to one of your top 10 guys anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So it'd be a little different roster math wise, but as far as the rest of the roster goes, Scott, we kind of talked about it. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the back end of the wide receivers position. I would be keeping Atkins over Kroll at this point, as I made myself perfectly clear there on that one. And I'm also not sure about the running back spot. I mean, somebody that we at least I definitely overlooked coming into the season, but I think Beatty did pretty well. I think you could probably subject him to the practice squad, and if somebody took him, God bless him, good luck. Watson's the only one for sure that I think's out. Not sure what's going to happen with P. Ryan, Estime, those guys as well. And then the back of the offensive line, I think that Sherman's out. Crum was horrible. Mustafer probably out too. Probably keep Parrott. Probably keep Throckmorton. Probably Forsythe and Palshetsky as well, along with the starters. So there's 9 guys there. That's probably the ones I'm looking at. Offense, I'm not sure. Do they keep Troy Franklin as a 4th round pick? Probably. Does he deserve it? I don't know. He's young. Vele was interesting. Probably little Jordan Humphrey's going to do the same thing he did last year, where he jumped up and down off the practice squad until an injury inevitably occurs. Wide receivers is a spot that's a lot of opportunity and a lot of guys who didn't really answer the bell like we'd hoped this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, is it depth or is it everybody's just kind of mediocre? I mean, it's like, oh man, I see comments last night. So like, man, this wide receiver room is just loaded. Is it? You got Cortland Sutton, and then do you have any true standouts after that? Maybe. We'll see as the season goes on. There's some guys that can play there, and again, the depth is solid. But do you have the difference makers at wide receiver? We'll see. And do you keep Troy Franklin? I'll be really surprised if they cut a 4th-round pick.
I'd be surprised too, just because they traded up for him and everything, and he's so young. But man, I don't think he earned it. Not a very good outing in camp and preseason. And it's also no special teams value. Scott, it's hard to keep your 4th, 5th, 6th wide receiver if they don't do diddly.
You knew that coming in. I mean, did you trade up? Did you miss that badly on your evaluation?
Too early to say.
Most guys won't. Most won't admit that in the first season.
Mm-hmm.
That, hey, we missed this bad. We're going to cut a 4th rounder that we traded up for. They just won't admit it. Even if it should happen, 99 times out of 100, it won't.
Yep, and that's something I wrote about it. I don't know if the article's out yet, but the preseason rookie of the year odds. Caleb's obviously number 1, Jaden number 2, and then a lot of people have Neighbors and Harrison over Nix as well. It's not necessarily a Nix problem. It's an offensive firepower problem. I mean, with a quick game, you need guys who can make a guy miss and do something. And does Denver have the weapon? I think they're going to have the scheming, but do they actually have the playmakers on the perimeter to do things in the quick game? I mean, what would Peyton Manning look like? He'd look great, obviously, with these weapons, but at his heyday, he had weapons out there that he was able to identify the matchup, and then they could do stuff after the catch. Tom Brady as well. I mean, NFL is very valued with wide receivers, and Denver's just question mark after question mark.
And as Coach Chris comes back in, part of it is, here is the evaluation. And again, we will see, because right now we haven't seen much out of Marvin Mims. Does that mean he won't do much? No, it doesn't. But we're skeptical. Troy Franklin, does that mean his career's over? No, but we're skeptical. And those are 2 investments, now a 4th-round pick, I know. But, Marvin Mims, you're expecting, because Chris comes in. I love our depth and change of pace in our running backs. I see life from our wide receivers, DL and edge. Our defensive backs are solid. We have a lot of young depth. Looks promising for the future. Paging Mr. Mims. Where are you, Mr. Mims? You want to talk about that quick passing game? I'm with Coach Chris on this because you just mentioned it, Nick. Where are your quick passing games where I can get someone who can beat a man off the line of scrimmage for that quick slant, that quick out, and then make a man miss and turn a 3-yard gain into a 15-yard gain? Are they out there, or are you going to be counting on throwing the ball up for Cortland Sutton and him making acrobatic catches and being contested down the field again?
I mean, honestly, you're hoping that maybe Javonte Williams could be that guy in the pass game, maybe even Dulcich. I don't know if it's coming from the wide receiver position, though, so to speak.
Yeah, there's solid guys. There's solid pros, but are there the difference makers when you're facing number 1 defenses? Because I think in the preseason, you only faced a quarter of ones, and that was against the Indianapolis Colts, and they didn't play all their ones.
No.
You didn't play all your ones either, but you played them a lot. You played your ones about as much as anybody in the NFL in the preseason. Is it going to look different when they're scheming against you and they're pressing the line of scrimmage? Can you have guys that can get off there, and can you dictate with the run? That'll help.
Yeah.
Yes. That'll help.
Yep, it should. And hopefully they'll do that a lot this season. I mean, Javonte Williams last season, I haven't been super impressed with the backup running backs. I think McLaughlin has a role, but he's not somebody who can be a full-time starter, just not versatile enough, not a good enough pass protector. I don't think he's got the frame to handle that load. So luckily, Broncos country, I mean, maybe not luckily, but we'll be talking a lot about running backs in the draft this upcoming year, because it is a loaded running back room coming in. You're going to have real good players day 2 coming in. So we'll see what happens. On the defensive side of the ball, wanted to give a shout out. First, actually, on the offensive side of the ball, I wanted to give a shout out to Brandon Johnson. He had a really good game yesterday, making some plays down the field, special teams guy as well. So will he make the team? We'll see. On defense, had to give a shout out to Jordan Jackson. He was all over the field. Maybe it's a Jordan Jackson versus Angelo Blackson conversation there. Jackson's a little different body type, 6'4", 295. But, I mean, he looked pretty good out there, him versus Garcia. But Jackson, I think, stood out a little bit more this season. Wanted to give a shout out to Andre Smith. Looked good overall, I thought. Really did want to give a shout out to Stranad as well. That tackle that he had, that forcing the fumble, that was awesome. Special teams ace as well. Level Bailey, I think he's more practice squad bound, but he had that turnover return for a touchdown. That was awesome. Fun to watch as well. And on the defensive side, it does sound like Mathis is okay. We're going to get an MRI today, but we'll see how that falls there. And Keedron Smith also stand out in this game.
Yep. One guy I like the Jordan Jackson. He made himself some money. When we want to talk about, I'm going to make you millions. He made himself some money, whether it's with the Broncos or with someone else. He will have a job somewhere in the NFL this year. Not everybody's guaranteed to make a practice squad. So he will have an NFL job this year, whether it's with the Broncos. If they cut him, they need to bring him back. I think he's got that inside-outside versatility with that body type you're talking about, where he'd be a very, very nice backup to Zach Allen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we'll see. As far as, so obviously with 7:30, we got to get on out of here. Broncos probably looking in the cuts for linebacker talent. I've heard that they're actually looking for starting linebacker talent. So we'll see. I don't think they are in love with Griffith and Barton as starters, but they might have to go into the season with that. And questions at safety as well. So linebacker, safety, maybe tight end and running back as well. Some positions to keep an eye on for the Broncos, and positions that you should be able to find some talent out there. It's not edge rusher. It's not defensive tackle. It's not wide receiver. It's not quarterback. Those premiums, cornerback as well. Those spots harder to find through the waiver wire. You might be able to find somebody who ends up contributing on the 53 at those other spots. So we'll see. It's coming around the corner, and excited to see what happens with this Broncos team this season. Now that preseason's over and we have this long wait now until the Broncos play in Seattle up here. I'll be at the game on the 8th. I want to say the 8th. Yeah, the 8th. So that's coming up.
Is that a night game?
No, it's at 1:00, I think.
Okay, good.
Yep. So
I hate the primetime games.
East Coast,
They're too late for me. They're too late on the East Coast.
Yeah, the East Coast is not a good sports time zone. It's too late. But
No,
any final thoughts?
We had that discussion last week. I'm like, hell, I'm ready to move to Hawaii.
Yeah, right. For sure. Any final thoughts, though, as we wrap it on up here? I mean, I think they'll keep both quarterbacks. Peyton said as much, and I don't think there's going to be too many surprises other than some people that maybe were hyped up with hope more than actual play on the field that might not make the roster.
Which, again, it's that time of year. It's the time of year in the summertime where every free agent we signed was a steal. Every draft was undervalued, and we're going to be awesome. And again, some of the questions we've gotten yeses out of so far, knock on wood. Mm-hmm. Two big ones, Tim Patrick, Greg Dulcich, have both been healthy this far. Knock on wood again. And let's hope that keeps going. Stay tuned, MHH. Most teams have already had a round of roster cuts. So, it's not going to all just happen tomorrow in one final swoop. It'll be trickling in today, I would imagine. Most teams had them. The Broncos played last. So you didn't have them before the game started last night, before the game ended last night. But I would expect them to start happening today. So keep an eye on MHH. BroncosCountry.com. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scout Kennedy. I'm at Kendell MHH. Also follow us at Mile High Huddle, as well as Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe to us over on YouTube, like the show, and share on social media platforms. Shout out to all of our star givers today: Rob Bucksbaum, Michael Ronquillo, Troy Boer, Coach Chris a couple times, Perry West as well. You guys killed it for us today. We always appreciate you coming in. Coach says the show needs to be longer than an hour. Coach, man, if you keep dropping $20 super chats or other people join you, then potentially as the super chats come in at the end, we definitely hang out and do all that stuff as well. But we got other responsibilities and stuff going on here. So hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Scott, always good to see you. We'll see you again Wednesday morning. But until then, choose kindness and compassion. Have a great rest of your week, everyone, and go Broncos.